Hi, this is Brooke with MeetRx, and today I'm talking to Daniel Wiseman. Hey, Daniel, I'm so glad to meet you and glad you're going to spend some time with us and share with us what it's been like for you on the carnivore diet.
Great, and glad to be here.
So, what brought you to this meaty diet?
Well, it's the end stage of several iterations of an attempt to become healthier. I became very unhealthy in college with a very full schedule that basically led to me eating whatever I could afford and whatever I had time for, which is, cheap fast food is often not the healthiest ones. And I found myself at the end of my college career to be very overweight and dealing with a number of health issues. I would get frequent nosebleeds. I didn't have health insurance at the time, so I don't know if I actually had high blood pressure or high blood sugar, a lot of these diagnosable things, but I had a lot of symptoms of them. Like I said, nosebleeds, frequent headaches, joint pain, skin tags, a lot of these problems that are, often associated with elevated insulin, high blood sugar, things like that. And I know that I have some health trouble in my family history. I also have had, believe it or not, some neuropathy in my fingers and toes, and this is coming back from being, in my 20s. And I also got cataracts in my eyes. I have two artificial lenses in my eyes. I was one of the youngest recipients for a new generation of eye lens, multifocal lens that have now given me perfect vision. So I attribute these things to the diet. And what happened was, as I got out of college and I was not healthy, I wanted to get healthy. Because I didn't know what healthy was. So I started learning about how to move, how to eat, what are fats, what are carbs, what are proteins, what do they do? And I discovered keto. And keto sounded a lot like Atkins, and I tried Atkins before and did with some success, but obviously it all rolled right back because I'd always kind of viewed it as sort of a temporary fix. But I saw a lot of people that were not only losing a ton of weight, but doing so and having a lot of energy and less hunger, which was always my problem. I'd lost weight before, and I think every fat person, and I don't say fat as a derogatory term, every fat person has lost 10 or 20 pounds. Very few people get to be a very large size and have never lost any weight ever. It just comes back. That's the problem. They probably can lose 10 or 20 pounds a dozen times, and they still be just as big as they are or bigger. And they were saying they're not hungry and they have energy. And that was exactly the opposite of any kind of experiment I had done, usually involving counting calories. So I decided to give it a try. And over the course of a month, I dropped 20 pounds effortlessly.
And that was on keto?
That was on keto. Yeah. So this was sort of like the regular sort of, internet keto of 2011, chicken, cream cheese, big salads, that kind of stuff. Yeah. A lot of artificial sweeteners. I basically kept, I think, the Splenda Corporation in business for a good amount of time, but it allowed me to get at least out of the red zone of health, right? So it got me to a certain level that I was, more or less comfortable with, and I felt better. I looked better. My clothes fit better. I had vastly better performance at the gym. When I first started working out, I started working out before I really kind of got my diet in line. As a very unhealthy person, and I found myself just completely gassed after maybe 15 or 20 minutes. My muscles would just stop working. I see these people doing 60 or 90-minute work sessions. I'm like, but if you tire your muscle's tired. You can't keep working out, and that was my experience. I'd limp back to the car and drive home. But pretty much immediately, once I got rid of wheat and sugar out of my diet, and potatoes into the sort of the major staples of an American diet, I could basically work out for as long as I wanted until I got bored. And I said, okay, this is kind of interesting.
Nice.
And I got more and more into the keto thing, and I started getting more and more whole foods, trying to eat less of these, keto cheesecakes and keto cookies and stuff. And, it basically occurred to me that for every cheesecake I eat is probably some kind of real food that I'm not eating. It's offsetting real food, and it's probably not a health food just because I made it with almond flour and stevia. So
exactly, it just takes the place of something that's really nutrient dense.
Exactly. So let's move to more nutrient dense food. And for me at the time, that meant a lot of big punch bowl salads and a lot of lean chicken with a lot of coconut oil. And coconut oil was like the thing at the time, and that got me to another level of health that I sort of settled into. And I was able to gain a lot of muscle on that. I was feeling very, very good. And I perhaps maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I came across a couple of these people. I think Kelly Hogan was in there, and Charles Washington was in there. But these people that were doing these long-term zero vegetable diets, and I thought that was very strange. And I thought that this was very childish. Like, what do you mean you don't eat vegetables? Eat your vegetables. There's a million different vegetables, a million different ways to prepare the vegetables. You can't just say you don't like vegetables. And then the response kind of came back like, no, I actually do better without vegetables.
Isn't that crazy? Is that just crazy?
Yeah, and so I still had some kind of lingering health problems that would crop up every so often. I'd get like digestive trouble and stuff. I was eating these great big punchable salads. I'd eat kale and broccoli and Brussels sprouts and that kind of stuff. The keto-friendly vegetables, and I eat them in very large quantities to keep myself from getting hungry, because that's what you do. You eat large quantities of low-calorie foods to remain full of the fiber or whatever. And what ended up happening is that, for one, I'd get diarrhea or whatever. I'd also find myself getting hungry as soon as my stomach was not physically stuffed. So I don't know if that's a mental thing. I don't know if that's actually like a chemical thing that's happening there, if that's real or whatever. But I decided to give the whole carnivore thing a try. I said, okay, I normally eat, 1, maybe 2 meals a day. I'd kind of settled into that with keto. And I would have a great big salad, a great big pile of vegetables, go have a pound of broccoli steamed up with a steak or hamburger or chicken or whatever. What if I just don't have the side? There's not really any calories in it anyway. It's just filler. It's stomach filler. And to my amazement, I ate far less volume of food, but stayed full. I won't even say full, because I wasn't full. I stayed satisfied for longer, and all the digestive trouble stopped.
Yes. And
I realized that, it wasn't, I was eating so much fat. That's why, or maybe the leftovers in the fridge had gone bad. That's why I was having digestive trouble. It was just the vegetables, particularly raw vegetables. I've discovered is just the worst thing for me to consume. If I do have any vegetables, which I do from time to time, as I do tolerate them, they need to be very well cooked. And there's a lot of indication that they're breaking down the fibers and breaking down some of the plant's defensive compounds with heat. It might be the reason for that, but very quickly I discovered there was something to this. My appetite was I wasn't nauseous, I wasn't sick, but food was like, okay, whatever, food.
So then you left the diet by volume into, yeah,
exactly. And I realized that there's a different kind of property that would happen. That is just, you'd either be hungry or stuffed. But then I realized there's actually this other thing called satisfied, where it's just like, if I had eaten a bunch of food, and just say 8 hours ago, and there was something that was delicious, I liked it. So I had a steak and whatever, and there's another steak in front of me. It's like, oh yes, I would like that steak. But then I'd get to this point where like, no, I really don't. I'm good. I'll just keep cruising. Maybe 24 hours later, I'd have my next meal. And I was like, whoa, there's something to this. This is really kind of weird. And I noticed a lot of other things that had gotten better. I would still occasionally get back pain, joint pain. I had what's called a slap tear in my shoulder from a shoulder injury that was going to require surgery, and it's a ligament tear. Effectively, if you look at the shoulder, there's a bunch of ligaments around it, and then there's one ligament that's basically inside the shoulder socket that holds the shoulder in place, and it's called a labrum. And that was torn, and it was causing me a lot of pain. And I've been doing some physical therapy on stuff on that. But moving to a diet of almost entirely animal products, and I was eating a lot of connective tissue as well, eating a lot of like pork rinds and bone broth soups and stuff. The pain went away. Mm-hmm. And the shoulder tightened up. I used to have this looseness where I could kind of like, if I shifted my shoulder right, I could feel the shoulder kind of pop in and out of its socket. That doesn't happen anymore. And I was like, did the physical therapy just start working? I don't know. Is it my diet? Maybe. That's kind of crazy. Yeah. I still have some lingering neuropathy in my fingers and my toes, but that's cleared up a lot. I'd be very interested to know what would have happened to my eyes if I had kept on the diet. I don't think there's any cases of cataracts actually reversing themselves, but maybe stopping any kind of progression would have been an interesting experiment. But I know that after the surgery that I received, I healed up very quickly with no complications. It's a quick and very mature procedure anyway, but doing it somebody my age was sort of unusual. And it's sort of like, well, we don't really know what'll happen. Sometimes young men, they heal very fast, and that's actually kind of a bad thing. Young men get more scar tissue and stuff because their bodies heal so fast, and we don't know what really is going to happen. But no, absolutely no complications from that whatsoever. And I think back on a lot of other trouble that had, and I really can't pinpoint it. Was it keto? Was it carnivore? Was it cutting out the carbs? Was it cutting out the plants? But I ask people, and they'll go, "Wait a minute, this is strange. Like, when's the last time you had the hiccups?" Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a weird one. That's been a long time. When's the last time you had a nosebleed?
Or sunburn?
Or sunburn? I used to. I'm very pale. I don't know if you can tell from the camera, but I'm quite pale, and I would get sunburned very easily before. My wife still harps on me to put on sunscreen, and I'll do if I'm going to be out in the sun for hours and hours and hours and hours. But I mean, just walking around the block or taking an hour or two, in the park or whatever, I would come back pretty pink, and that doesn't happen anymore either. And you go, this actually kind of makes sense. I'm kind of a food historian. I'm a big food lover. I absolutely love food. I love to learn how to cook. When I was broke in college, because that was like my one outlet. I couldn't afford to do much, but I could afford to cook. I loved learning about food and reading old recipes. I still love watching cooking shows now, even though I wouldn't necessarily go on the Great British Bake Off and eat a cake. I like watching people do it because to me it's art and it's kind of cool, and you get to see people enjoy something at the end of it, and that to me is fun. But if you look at old cookbooks, and this is stuff going to the 1800s, 1700s and stuff, especially for these great big feasts, or even for like cottages and stuff, in the American, Wild West. There's a lot of dishes for vegetables. There's a lot. But there is no mention of vegetables being healthy. The vegetables are always a way to get animal fat into your body.
Yeah.
Before it goes bad. So you slaughter a hog and you've got all this meat or whatever, pork chops and everything else, but you've also got 30 pounds of fat or whatever. What are you going to do? You just eat handfuls of fat? I mean, maybe we would, right? But we need to have a way to make this palatable. We need to have a way to make this usable. We need to have a way to stretch it out. And that's what all the cookbooks were. You have this piece of meat or this piece of fat, and you make it last longer and bigger and feed more of your children by mixing it with this vegetable. The vegetable is not doing anything. The vegetable is a delivery device. And the whole idea that the vegetable itself is healthy, I can't find any reference to that before about, the mid to late 1800s. I mean, it wasn't even considered. Meat was what you want to be. Yeah, you want to be.
When we were growing up, vegetables were considered virtuous. The more, the better.
Exactly. And people forget that that's pretty new. I mean, and we see even other cultures right now where meat is associated with vitality and strength and and vigor, and and we've kind of forgotten that. I think that's probably because we consume meat now differently than maybe we would have in the past, and maybe that is consumed traditionally in other cultures, right? Like if you have a steak, you're going to have a big baked potato with it generally in a restaurant. If you have a hamburger, it's not a hamburger patty; it's a hamburger with a bun, with ketchup, with fries, with a Coke, and I think that's where you see all this associational data that says red meat or any kind of meat is necessarily bad for you because red meat is associated with all this other things. Like we just saw this great study come out that was like, okay, you have one egg a day and you get a 60% greater chance of getting diabetes. And I'm like, who eats eggs? Nobody eats eggs. You eat eggs and toast with margarine and jam and a stack of pancakes with syrup. And it's not even real syrup. It's high fructose corn syrup flavored like maple. And you have a big glass of orange juice to wash it down. So it's like, of course, you're going to have some kind of association because that's the way people consume eggs. I bet if you did a study on people's houses, you would see people that live in a 5,000 square foot house are healthier than people who live in a studio apartment. Why? Because they're wealthier.
That's
They're
right.
going to have better health care. They're going to have better access in their community to health care. They're going to have a better support structure. They're going to probably have more family around them to tell them if they look sick or whatever. And all these other things are going to be more associated with health than the house. It's like, does actually being surrounded by more square footage make you healthier? No, of course not. Nobody would say that.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because now you can visit a fast food restaurant and just get 5 hamburger patties and have a wonderfully healthy meal.
Yeah, that's actually kind of great. And, actually, it's funny. They've pulled back on that. I think that enough people are actually doing this. Because I was traveling once, and I was in an airport in a Wendy's, and I like Wendy's because they don't use non-frozen meat, and actually, I think they're pretty tasty. But I went and asked, can I get just the patties by themselves? He says they actually removed that from our system. We can't do that anymore.
Oh,
I said,
no.
interesting. Yeah.
I still can locally, but yeah.
Yeah, so I guess there's some kind of option in there, and there certainly selling a cooked beef patty for $1 is probably, if you factor in everything else around it, they actually would lose money on that, right? The energy to ship the meat and cook the meat and pay the guy and everything else, that's probably a losing money proposition, because they're making money on the fries and the drink that they would assume you'd be sold with it, right? Because those cost nothing.
Maybe they could maybe. Well, what are you eating now? What are you eating now these days? What's your regular day?
Well, I am a father now, which is exciting, and I am still a worker bee, and that takes up a phenomenal amount of time. So what I do is I will do a large prep of meat, usually for several days. I've got a Ninja Foodie, which I'm a huge fan of. I call it the magic pork machine. I'll take a large piece of pork, a loin or a shoulder or whatever. I'll put it in that, pressure cook it down, and then crisp the top of it. If you're not familiar with the machine, it's like an instant pot with an air fryer built in. Very cool.
You use the pressure cooker.
Yeah, so I use the pressure cooker function, and then I can throw the broiler on it and put a nice crisp on it without needing to move it around.
Nice.
So I can cook up 3-4 pounds of meat or more all at once, and that just goes in the fridge, and then I'll just kind of have that. Maybe I'll make a side. Maybe I'll have some bacon and blue cheese or whatever with it. Maybe I'll cook up a couple of chickens and have some dairy with that, or some leftover bacon grease. I may have a vegetable side from time to time, but my mental state is that the meat is the food. The meat is the food. Everything I'm having.
And it sounds like you're using lots of different meats, lots of different animals.
Yeah, I like a lot of different animals. I tend to go for what's on sale. I live in a very expensive place. So, shaving my budget where I can, make sure that, for things that are needed, if I ever needed to get anything, emergency medical care, or, if I needed to fix the car, or if I need to do a home repair or anything, I know that I'm going to be able to do that because of little places that I save money here and there, like the food budget. Besides like my rent, my food budget is still the largest part of my budget. And, meat is, even cheap meat, is still more expensive than, rice and beans, right? So you have to sort of shop the sales, and sometimes it's going to be some weird stuff. Sometimes it'll be odd cuts of meat. Like a lot of people don't know how to cook a tri-tip. I make a great tri-tip. Pork shoulders.
Tri-tip is such a great California cut.
Yeah, and people don't. I didn't even realize it was a California only thing. Like I go online and I'm like, oh, I got this great tri-tip, and it was $2.39 a pound, and it's great. Look how beautiful and marbled and whatever else is. And people in New York say, what's a tri-tip?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're eating ruminants, and you're eating beef and pork, and eggs, and
big fan of eggs. I will eat chicken because the rest of the family likes chicken. I think it's the worst meat, but no, I've gotten good enough at making chicken that I enjoy it. But I definitely do.
Joe Rogan calls it the weak bird.
Yeah, I wish that I could do more like duck or goose. These waterfowls and stuff that are more hardy kind of meats. But the duck is expensive around here. Goose I've never even seen a goose in the store. I would do more lamb, but lamb is also very expensive around here. So I kind of do different sorts of cuts of beef and chicken and pork, and different sort of rotating ways of preparation. Chops or steaks, or pulled with the different seasonings and spices on it, or not. I used to, I have actually a whole drawer of spices. I probably have a spice cabinet to rival, a Michelin-starred restaurant, but I don't use any of it anymore. Most of it is just, salt, pepper, maybe some garlic and stuff, and that actually ends up tasting better than a lot of these, magic combinations that I've tried before. So my food has gotten much simpler, and like I said, as being a new dad, that makes it very simple and fast to make meals. Even if I'm making meals, for the rest of the family who's not eating the same way I am, just take the meat out, heat it up, maybe take some quick stuff, throw it together, steam it up real quick, and it's done. And I get home and go from walking in the front door to eating and being done with dinner, dishes in the sink within a half hour. And that's kind of where it needs to be for life to function, in my situation. And not needing to have these multi-layered, people, cooking lasagnas and stuff that have 100 ingredients. But it's like life is simple because I do it this way.
All the work with vegetables. You have to grow them. You have to prepare the ground. You have to keep the gophers away. You have to keep them away. Then you have to and then you have to harvest them. You have to clean them, and you have to do so much work.
Yeah, I mean, I would do a lot of meal prep before, before I went full carnivore. And a lot of my work was just peeling and chopping and prepping vegetables. And the fact that I don't have to do that all the time is just an amazing time saver. It gives me more time to spend with my family. My wife would complain. They're like, hey, you go into the kitchen, disappear for an hour. I'm like, well, yeah, I've been trying to make a nice meal. It's just like, we don't need all that. Okay.
Coffee drinker?
I do like coffee. Like I said, the plants I do consume, I regard them as adjuncts to everything else. Coffee, I like coffee. Coffee is not food. Coffee is a drug. And I will never say that drugs are inherently good or bad. Just understand the consequences of whatever drug you decide to put into your body, whether it's coffee or something stronger, and, deal with the consequences accordingly. I see a mug there. I'm guessing that's coffee.
Yeah, I mean, medicine is medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it is, whether it be therapy or a shot of whiskey or a good run.
Exactly. And that's sort of my, my template that I look at everything is that there's going to be some benefit. There's going to be some perhaps disadvantage, and it may be a health disadvantage. It may be a monetary. It might be a time disadvantage. Weigh it out. Don't just jump on anything. Just say, okay, is this actually worth it, what I'm doing? Or am I getting a net benefit by doing it? And so do it. And if not, don't do it.
Now, I hear you spend some time on Twitter. Helping people, schooling people, sharing with people about the carnivore diet, about the species specific diet of carnivore. And you, what's that like for you? I mean, are you involved in conflicts with vegetarians or what?
I am, and the thing is, I engage them with this thought in my mind, is that I am not ever going to convince them. If somebody has gone vegetarian and is strongly vegetarian in mind enough to actually engage with somebody named Steak and Iron, right? I'm not going to convince them of anything, but there is a chance that maybe I will be able to clown them enough so that somebody who's kind of on the fence goes, wait a minute, this guy's not really making any sense. The studies that are saying meat's bad really are kind of weak, and I didn't realize that, and it really sounds like this guy's making more of a kind of a personal ethics judgment than really one that's based on science. I don't want to change my life based on some guy on the internet's opinion. Maybe I can look at a couple things that are a little bit perhaps, counter to what I've learned or whatever. And that's sort of where I exist. Is like the guy on the fence who's watching, he might say that, oh, I didn't realize that, they've done interventional trials where they just gave people a bunch of free fruits and vegetables and their health didn't get any better because of it. But they took malnourished people out of Africa and South America and just gave them a bunch of meat and their health got better. Well, that's interesting. I thought meat was bad for you. Why is giving people meat that are unhealthy suddenly making them healthy? Oh, and then there's these weirdos who are eating nothing but meat and they're not dying. They're not all just getting colon cancer and heart disease left and right. In fact, now that we've got tools to measure these things directly, like a coronary arterial calcium score and a CIMT score, they're coming back clean as a daisy. Yeah. So wait a minute. You kind of go, where did all this information come from? And you start digging and you realize it's all kind of weak, right? I mean, you have these associational studies. Like I wanted to see these food frequency questionnaires where they say, okay, you do all these things and you eat this stuff and you're healthy, and you eat this stuff and you're not healthy. Okay, can we stratify that by wealth? Because wealth is health, is strongly correlated with health. If you're making $25,000 a year in the United States, you're probably not going to live very long. But if you're making $250,000 a year, you are. That's a fact. All other things considered. But rich people tend to eat more fruits and vegetables. Why? They're expensive. Especially because you can't just eat them, right? You have to eat them on top of everything else, because you can't just live on, broccoli. There's no calories in it. There's nothing in it. So I'd like to see a lot of this stuff sort of like stratified, and we say, okay, what's actually causing this benefit? One of the great things I read some time ago was that people that eat a lot of red meat die more in car accidents. Why? Does red meat make you a bad driver? No, of course not. That's stupid. Red meat is correlated with disregarding health advice entirely. So they're going to drink more alcohol, and they're going to disregard the advice to not get behind the wheel when you do. Sure. That's where it comes from. So, I try to step back. Go ahead.
What you talked about with health and wealthy people being able to eat fruits and vegetables or other things, or more fancy foods, or just a broader range. They have more selection.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes ground beef such an equalizer.
Yeah,
such a great equalizer, because everyone can afford ground beef.
Yeah, and it'd be amazing if the solution to health for a huge portion of the United States is literally $2.99 a pound in the butcher's cabinet right now. That would be just amazing, right? And I see a lot of arguments against meat, the carbon footprint, which I think is way overblown. But let's just say that meat production has a nasty carbon footprint, or it uses 1 million gallons of water and stuff. What is the carbon footprint of the healthcare industry? It's enormous. It's an order of magnitude higher than all of agriculture. You talk about chemical runoffs and stuff of producing medicines, and the energy it takes to run these laboratories. It's a tremendous suck. So what if you got all diabetics off of their treatments, or half of them, and cut that cost down? Yeah, what would the benefit, if we're concerned about the planet, what's the benefit to the planet there? Forget about just human suffering. Yeah. What about the whole planet?
In fact, I think I read a statistic the other day, that a diabetic dies every 7 minutes. A diabetic dies every 7 minutes. It's amazing.
And it's new. I mean, diabetes was something that was, novel back in the day, and for one, if you didn't have type 1 diabetes and you died as a child before they came out with insulin, it was something that was just it was very strange, and they would starve you. That was a treatment for it. And obesity was also very unusual at the time. I mean, the fat man in the circus, or the fat lady in the circus, right? I mean, these things were all very uncommon back then, and now they're so common that they're threatening to destroy entire economies, because we're throwing billions of dollars to fix a problem, and it's only getting worse. So you say, what's actually changed? And you go, well, we're eating a lot less red meat, we're eating a lot more seed oils, we're eating a lot more processed food, we're eating a lot less saturated fat, and some of the data says that we're dying of heart disease less, but I think that's probably got more to do with the fact that our medical treatments of it's gotten better. So are we treating the right root cause? Don't treat the problem, treat the root of the problem.
I think one could say that you offer food for thought.
Yes, I do. We you can bleep this, but we call it shit posting, right? This is not me inventing anything new. This is me taking knowledge that I have obtained and regurgitating it in a way that's entertaining. And that's what I want to do. I don't want people to have to do deep dives into these great studies, and be bombarded with data and numbers and figures and studies and what read whole books and whatever. It's like, okay, eat a lot of meat, drink water, listen to your appetite, watch what your body does when you do this, and if it works for you, continue doing it.
Yeah, it's awesome that it can be so simple.
Yeah.
And you can play around.
Yeah, and you can play around with it. I mean, like I said, I've got this template that I do now, which is very heavy meat, on meats, and I will take, deviations from that either for experimental purposes or for special occasions or whatever, and I'll often have consequences of it, and maybe an experiment I'll do will work. But I've got this base that I can always come back to that always gets me to a healthy point in terms of body weight, in terms of how I feel, in terms of how I look and how I perform, how I can focus. And that's always going to be there. I can always come back to that because I know it works. And is there something out there that's going to work better? Maybe. And maybe I find it. or maybe I don't care enough to keep experimenting. And I have this thing that I know how to do effortlessly that keeps me at a healthy body weight and a healthy, mindset and a healthy, feel. I mean, by any measure, I am a healthy person.
And in the meantime, you just get stronger and sharper and things just improve.
Yeah. Yeah. It's bizarre. Like everything just keeps getting a little bit better. And, I have to be, on my toes at all times because I do have I do have I won't say stressful job, but I have an involved job, and I have my family life, and I have my little toddler running around, and a lot of it requires me to be very focused. And one thing that was a big problem when I was, before I made any efforts toward health, was the extreme fatigue. I mean, I would fall asleep driving, and that was, a very scary thing for me. I could have died. I could have killed people, and that hasn't happened in years. Even if I'm staying up all night, even if I'm, miss my coffee, I'm not falling asleep at the wheel. So, I have this way of doing things, and it's always going to be there. And it's just an amazing way that I've found that animals can nourish you, not just feed you, not just provide calories. Because I think the only thing people think meat is for, like in the general population, is like, oh, meat is good for a lot of protein. It's good if you're trying to be a bodybuilder or whatever, but it's probably unhealthy. You should eat your salad. And on the other end of it, I kind of, if you try this, you go, well, maybe, but what actual benefit were those vegetables doing me? Yeah. Not much. I mean, really nothing I can point to.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I like to say, get fat adapted on keto and then come on home to carnivore.
Yeah. It's just, it's easy. It's simple. Your trips to the grocery store are pretty fast, so it leaves more time for the important things in life. And, there's a lot more important things than just, going grocery shopping and cooking food. You got family, you got friends.
I thank the animals every day for sustaining it.
Yeah. And, I eat parts of the animal a lot of people don't. I eat organs. I eat tongue. I eat, I famously made a loaf of bread out of chicken bones.
Chicken bones. Oh, did you post that recipe?
Yeah, it's on there. If you look through my Twitter, I call it iron bread. It was pressure cooked chicken bones until they were falling apart, ground them up with some eggs, and it made a loaf. And it was bizarre, but it was very good. It was like eating a big pile of chicken soup. Chicken soup you can pick up, hold in your hand.
I make a crust. I make a pizza crust out of chicken breast. Yeah.
Yeah, I do the chicken breast pizza crust too.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, but the bones get thrown away. Now you're using the whole animal. I think if the chicken's looking down on him, if the soul of that chicken is looking down, he's saying, this guy has honored my existence by using the bones too. So.
Well, and absolutely. In fact, when you bring up honor the existence, I mean, I think that with a carnivore diet, and you're so sustained by the nutrient density of the species appropriate diet, and you're so sustained by the animals. And so it gives you even a better chance to live a life that honors the gift and sacrifice of the animals.
Absolutely. I am, I've taken a very strong stance of nonviolence as part of my own personal philosophy. And it was something that I kind of wrestled with once upon a time, was like, I would not hurt another human being, but I kill and eat animals for food. How do I justify that? And, I had kind of a mind shift change where it became clear to me that this is not an oppressive hierarchical kind of relationship here. This is a circle, right? This is a cycle. I can't do good in the world if I'm not healthy. And, I'm going to consume animals, and hopefully in the most ethical way that I can. And, eventually I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to support agriculture that is sustainable the best I can. And then eventually, I'm going to pass away and I'll be, part of the earth too. So, there was a great book, The Vegetarian Myth by Lierre Keith. Big fan of that book. If anybody's listening and hasn't read that, go read it. It really gives a strong kind of moral and ethical argument for the consumption of meat, which was, like I said, something I kind of wrestled with for a while, and it made a good mindset shift to saying, this is 100% consistent with my beliefs.
Yeah, you're part of it. We're part of nature's design, nature's beautiful food chain, and we're part of her design.
Yeah. You don't need to introduce more suffering into the world with your dietary choices, not necessarily. And to think that there is a dietary method, let's say veganism, whatever, that is completely without cruelty or without death. It doesn't exist. For something to live, something else has to die. The rabbits and mice and lizards and everything else that get, their whole habitats destroyed to grow, your precious almonds and soybeans.
Yeah.
You should feel sad for them too.
Well, I'm glad you're in the carnivores and you're
glad to be here.
Good food for advice, food for thought, rather. Food for thought.
I'm glad I'm here too. It's a great community. It's very positive. It's a lot of fun. I love talking about it. I try not to be too evangelical in my personal life about it, but people know what I do works. And I'm always happy to talk to people and say, if you want to try what I do, it's worked very well for me. I'm happy to tell you how to do it right and to maybe not make some of those mistakes I'd made, missteps that I had made up to this point. So I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for this community. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for coming on and sharing with us. Thanks a lot. And thank you for your, food for thought for everyone.
Thank you so much.
And great. And I hope that you can do some writing, funny writing someday.
Yeah. No, I've got some writings that I would like to have published and put out sometime, but I need to find a little bit more personal time to be able to flesh those out into something worth publishing. But who knows? A lot of book writing is the hot thing. Everybody's got a book now, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Well,
enjoy your family.
You as well. Thank you very much and have a great day.
You too.